got one more guest for this Wednesday edition of Bang the Book Radio. That is Wes Reynolds, at Wes Reynolds, and the number 1 on Twitter. Wes, how's it going today, man?
Adam, good morning. How are you, sir?
Doing very well, bud. Appreciate your time as always, man. Super Bowl 53. It still feels like it's a week away, but it's only a few days away now. New England still 2.5. Total inching up a little bit, up from 56 at Pinnacle to 56.5, staying 56.5 in a lot of other places out there. Anything change in your mind here as we get closer to kickoff about the side of the total?
No, I mean, I still like the Rams. I mean, everybody's waiting for 3, and, honestly, the 3 might not come. And, I think as we get closer to game time, you're going to see a little bit more balance in terms of ticket count. I mean, obviously the early ticket count has been on the Patriots, and, they'll probably have the majority of the tickets come game time. But, I think you're going to see Rams bettors kind of wait, and then if they don't see it, they're probably going to end up jumping in or seeing if they could find a rogue 3, and maybe they got to lay $1.20 to take this. So, I still like the Rams side here. I just think that, you've got a team that has had to hear for 2 weeks that, they don't belong in the game, that they got there because of a bad call. I mean, they were really the highest power-rated team in the league all season. Many people's power ratings, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, they don't belong there. Well, if you can make the argument that if D4 doesn't line up offside, the Patriots aren't here. Even though they really more dominated the game, their respective conference championship game in terms of yardage and times of possession versus what the Rams did against the Saints. But, the Rams I don't think are getting credit for that win, though. I mean, they still got the stop in overtime. The Saints, who had never lost at home under in the Sean Payton, Drew Brees kind of era, a home playoff game, never lost. And the Rams, and they got the ball first in overtime, and the Rams got the stop and forced the turnover. And the Rams are also down 13-0 in the first quarter in one of the toughest road environments in the league. So, it's almost like they're kind of not getting credit for that. And because of that missed pass interference call, and actually 2 missed calls because they missed the helmet as well. So, they're kind of, that's the other stuff is kind of being ignored because of the call. And, that's been replayed for a couple weeks now on television. And I think, you got this Rams team that's probably sick and tired of it. Both teams are going to be motivated because it's the Super Bowl. There's not a lot of motivational edges you can find here in this game. But you've had to have them sit and watch that for a couple weeks now. And, I mean, a couple weeks ago, people were saying the Patriots were too old. Now, all of a sudden, this is, people think this might be an easy win for them, which even if they win, it never really is. I mean, every Super Bowl the Patriots have played in, win or lose, has been a close game. So that's why I think you see the line where it is.
Well, and what's so interesting about this game here is that, we saw the initial New England money, which really wasn't a big surprise. We saw some people enter the market to grab a pick or grab it, -1, expecting this thing to keep climbing, and it has. But we were operating under the impression that, this is going to get to 3. This is definitely going to get to 3. Yeah, it's going to go to 3. 85% of the money is on New England here. 89% of the money is on New England here. This is going to get to 3. Maybe it's not, as you said. And as we just talked about in our previous segment with Brian Leonard, which was a very, very strong segment for anybody who just listens on a segment-by-segment basis, maybe we don't get 3. So, Wes, as somebody who likes the Rams, what do you do? Do you buy the half point up to 3? Do you take the 2.5 reluctantly? Do you just play the money line? We may get a 3, but if we don't, what are you going to do here?
Yeah, I mean, and this is where I think you got to shop around. And there's a couple places in town, in Las Vegas at least, that have went to 3 minus $1.20. I mean, a lot, maybe what are considered your shops that cater more to the public bettors, and that would be like Station Casinos, Boyd Gaming Coast Casinos, and that would be like the Orleans, the Gold Coast, and, a couple of the places downtown have gone to that. I know South Point went to 3 briefly last week just to kind of see what the market would do, a little experiment here, and that lasted for about 15 to 20 minutes. So you are, I think, going to see a couple maybe rogue 3s. I don't know if you'll see flat ones, but I'm not a guy that's against necessarily buying points. But, I mean, I think if you do think the Rams are going to win the game, you try to find the best price possible. There's some maybe 125s or 130s out there. I mean, and as somebody that will buy points on the key numbers, I mean, if you're laying 120, it's maybe not that bad, depending on how much you're betting. But, if you're going to get some books that maybe play a little game and maybe juice it up to 125 or 130 or something like that, then I would just assume just take the money line.
Now, this is your first Super Bowl out in Las Vegas, and you mentioned some of the local places, the stations, the coast casinos, are the ones that have gone to 3, kind of catering more towards the public. Well, the public's starting to come into town now. They're going to start flying in today and tomorrow, and some people flying in Friday as well. And even though some of these off-strip places are very good, and I think downtown is a really great place as well, most of them are going to stay on the Strip. So most of them are going to put down their Joe Public bets on the Strip. So what's the pulse sort of in terms of what the Strip books are going to do you think?
Yeah, I think, you're going to – it looks like that they're, at least as of today, as we record this, they're going to need the Rams, but I think you're going to see some Rams money come in as you get closer to game time. I mean, just in our VSiN newsletter, we did an informal poll, and it was 15 to 15, and these include guys that are bookmakers, Sherman at the Westgate, guys that are pro sports bettors, whether they're media figures or whatnot. And you've seen a lot more of a balance than I thought you might see. I thought it might be, if you had 30, it might be 20-10 Patriots or 18-12 or something, that it would maybe more mirror what we've seen in the betting pattern so far, but it's been pretty even. So I think as you get closer to the game time.
Wes, you still there? All right, seems like we lost Wes Reynolds there for a minute. We'll see if we can get him to call back on the line here. Just dropping off. Again, I'm going to blame it on the polar vortex and, the miserable cold that most of the country is dealing with. Not a problem for Wes, of course, with the weather being nice out there in Vegas. But, that is interesting. I mean, do we start to see some public bettors that will be willing to take the Rams? At least, I mean, and again, the public is a lot more informed than it used to be. I think that there's still this, very negative connotation of public bettors being extremely square. And maybe I kind of proliferated that a little bit in that little bit that I just mentioned. But I think the public is a lot more informed than it used to be. And I think that there are some people out there that are going to say, you know what, the Rams are a very good team. Everybody that's ever had any sort of, impact or any sort of job with Sean McVay is getting a head coaching position now. There are reasons for there to be some Rams steam here. And maybe some public bettors will come in on that side. And like I said, I mean, maybe I wrongly proliferated that perspective about, the public just being ill-informed or misinformed or something like that. Maybe I was a little bit wrong in the way that I worded that. But, it is one of those things where I think that we probably do see some segments of public money, especially the contrarian public bettors. They're going to want to come in on that Rams side there. Maybe do that here in this game. So that is something that does merit watching as we move forward here. And again, I mean, when you have a line like this, I mean, last year's line, Philadelphia in the dead zone really between 4 and 6, I don't think that was as interesting to discuss, as interesting to talk about as what we're seeing here with this line in the 2.5 range. I think this is something where, we've got this thing hovering around a key number. We had it opening around a coin flip situation. It's something where this line has a different level of intrigue to it, I think, than what we're, currently seeing, and what we have seen in previous games. So, this power struggle between the risk managers and the betting populace. We know that if we go to 3, they're going to come in en masse. We know that if we go 2.5, we force them to a decision. And, right now, maybe that's not a bad place for the sports books to be. Maybe that's something where the sports books are actually fairly content with the position that they're in there. So it's a very, very intriguing set of circumstances, with what's going on here for this game. So, this is a Super Bowl that is a little bit unique. And again, it's unique because we've got, more betting out there when it comes to national, interests. We've got a lot of Northeastern sports books now. We've got Mississippi as well. Obviously, we've got, other states that are moving towards it that are following along with what's going on here in the markets. So should be a really, really interesting Super Bowl on a various number of fronts. We got Wes Reynolds back on the line with us. Wes, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. You got me?
Yeah, we got you. I was just kind of saying there that, I think what's really interesting about this game, and we did talk about this with Brian, earlier on, is that got a rare situation for the Super Bowl in that the books and the risk managers can put a lot of people to a decision here. The decision that you and I just talked about. Do you buy up to 3? Do you reluctantly take 2.5? Do you take the money line? A lot of times the Super Bowl doesn't set up this way. This is a very unique animal and almost a case study, I think, for some things that we could see going forward, especially with wide sweeping legalization.
Yeah, and that's why before we got disconnected there, I was talking about the props and what Jay Cornegay and some of the other sportsbook directors around town were saying is that, you're going to have probably maybe the decision come on the props. I mean, 55 to 60% of the bets, some will be more, some will be lower, but on average are going to decide, are going to be bet on props. So, I think that allows people, if people, because you do have a lot of people that you talk to. I mean, it's very rare. I mean, you're going to bet the Super Bowl because it's the Super Bowl, whether it's the side or the total. So it's very rare you're going to sit out. But it's really a rare occurrence that I think that maybe you really have a strong opinion on a Super Bowl. I mean, I don't have a strong opinion on every single Super Bowl because more often than not, the line is probably pretty right. And, these guys have been buried in football all season, so, they've adjusted power ratings and all of this. I mean, the guys making these numbers aren't dummies. And it's very rare that you're going to get edge onto one side. So, I mean, that's why I think that, what you were saying is good, that they could kind of force people into a decision. Do they want to, where the line is kind of settled? I mean, I don't all of a sudden see Patriots money driving this through 3. So, I mean, this is pretty much going to be where it is, even with all the money coming in. So, I mean, so that's where I think, like, the props become really important in terms of, having a decision in terms of what your ultimate money decision is going to be.
Well, and as you mentioned, I mean, this should be a very tight, very sharp line. And it is interesting that the Rams, probably if this was a random week in the regular season, would be a 1.5 point favorite. It is 2.5, so there is some overlay, but, we're not crossing key numbers or anything like that. A lot of people that do this for a living or are long-term winners at this do attack the prop betting market. I presume that's your strategy here, Wes, as well. Any props that have jumped off the page to you that you've played already or that you are taking a really hard look at?
Well, I've only played a couple, and I'll probably add a couple more. This isn't something where I'm going to have like 40 in a portfolio like some guys will, guys that are maybe able to concentrate on this a little bit more that maybe aren't doing as much basketball at this point. One I did play was penalty yards, and even though I like the Rams in the game, I think that ultimately they're probably going to have more penalty yards, and that's anywhere from, like, I think 130 to maybe 150 or 160 right now, and a minus on the Rams. One thing about the Patriots is they can be beaten in this game, but they're probably not going to beat themselves. If you look for the last 6 years, they've been in the top 3 in least amount of penalty yards. In fact, I think they've rated 3rd in each of those 4 years in terms of least penalty yards a game, where it's in like the high 30s or low 40s. I don't have the averages in front of me, but so this isn't a team that this is a team that usually does execute, and this isn't a team that gets a lot of false starts. or gets a lot of procedure penalties. So, I took the Rams to have more penalty yards. I also, one prop that has been hit early because we saw it in Kansas City, and I'm actually looking to go the opposite way, is the James White receiving yards. I think that could go lower because I don't think that Wade Phillips is just all of a sudden, like Bob Sutton in Kansas City did, just going to give all this room to James White out of the backfield and just let him move the chains and move down the field on him. So I would actually lean toward, and you can kind of correlate this, I would lean toward the under in receiving yards, with the Rams playing in more of they'll play a light box, but I don't think it'll be like Kansas City's. So you could actually maybe look at like James White under receiving yards and maybe over rushing attempts because they're going to give him the ball because both of these teams, I mean, everybody looks at this highest Super Bowl total ever that was set and say, oh, these teams are pass. I mean, these teams are passing teams that like to set up the run. And I think both of these teams are going to commit to the run and stay disciplined and be able to do that. So I could see James White over rushing attempts, and I think it's over like 3.5, maybe around even money. So you could maybe correlate those two and kind of go against the grain there on that one.
Yeah, I like the different perspective there. I mean, I already played Rex Burkhead rushing attempts over, thinking that, I sort of feel like, again, establishing that run, if the Patriots want to do that, and I do think that is something that they want to do, they're going to use all three backs in a running sense. And then maybe even use Sonny Michel a little bit more as a pass catcher, sort of throw some different wrinkles out there for the Rams to worry about. So maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe a lot of us are overthinking it. But, when you look at two teams that have a lot of skill guys they can spread the ball around to, maybe you do have to be a little bit creative and expect these teams to think outside the box some. So I do like that. And, of course, you can follow Wes on Twitter at Wes Reynolds, the number 1, for some more of his Super Bowl props. But, Wes, let's go to the desert here. TPC Scottsdale, Waste Management Phoenix Open. A lot of fun, this event. Tough crowd, but I don't think people realize how tough this course is, too.
Yeah, and it's a really good field this week, even though, because I did a preview for the first event in Saudi Arabia for the European Tour for the VSiN Point Spread Weekly newsletter, and you actually in that field over in Saudi Arabia now have 4 of the top 5 players in the world, and the 2 winners last week, Rose DeChambeau, Brooks Koepka, and Dustin Johnson, both all playing in that event, but this is still a very strong field. It's not, you're probably going to get in the mid-teens in terms of a winning score. I mean, you saw, obviously in 2013 was kind of an anomaly where Phil Mickelson was 28 under, but if you look at a lot of the winning scores, 15 under, 16 under, 17 under, it has been lengthened a little bit actually from 2014, so that kind of makes that Mickelson example mood a little bit because course has been lengthened to a little less than 7,300 yards. Back 9 is really probably the more exciting one. It's a desert track, but it plays a little bit linksy at times. Average size greens, but they are fairly fast. So, you'll be watching this and you'll see a lot of putts go by the hole. Altitude is a little higher, so it flies, a smidge further. So I don't think distance is necessarily, a deal breaker for some guys. I think there are guys that are maybe your medium or shorter hitters that can certainly compete here.
All right, so here's the question. I mean, again, the atmosphere for this tournament is very, very different. I mean, you've obviously got the Coliseum hole, the par 3 16th, but you've got a lot of drunks walking around the course, people yelling in players' backswings. You've got, it's kind of an anxious type of event for players, especially because golf, usually a quiet, serene type of game, at least while guys are lining up their shots and things of that sort. How much of that creeps into the guys that you take for this event? I mean, do you look for personalities that feel like they should mesh well with the course and the atmosphere?
Yeah, a little bit here. And I mean, if you look, on the back nine. I mean, starting with 15, you got a reachable par 5, but you got water all the way down the left, and you could, that certainly comes into play. Obviously, 16 with the theater and all the hullabaloo at 16, and then you go to 17, and you got a drivable par 4 where you'll have some guys that'll go for it, but there is water in play, and there's also water in play on 18 with some deep bunkers. So, this is an event where more often than not, you're going to have some swings on those last 4 holes. And so a little bit here, what I was thinking, and I looked at, and one of the reasons I ended up taking.
Wes, you still there? All right. It seems like we may have lost Wes Reynolds again here on today's edition of Bang the Book Radio, and I sincerely do apologize for that. This is one of the, one of the hardships here of doing this show live. We got Wes back on the line already. Wes, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I apologize for that. I don't know what happened there, but anyway, what I was saying about Matsuyama is that 2-time winner here. He had to withdraw last year because of an illness, but as a guy that clearly likes this course, played great last week in San Diego. Unfortunately for me, he didn't win. But, he was a guy I definitely went with. And, I mean, if you look at previous, like, your horses for courses types, Matt Kuchar's played very well here. Bubba Watson, who I also took at around 40-1, has played well here. Brendan Steele, those type of guys. And then you obviously have people that are going to take your hot players, like your John Rahms, who's the tournament favorite, and an ASU grad, so has played this plenty. Xander Schauffele, Tony Finau, those guys are going to draw a lot of action. But, I went with guys that I think have relatively calm demeanors. I took Adam Hadwin, Alex Noren, Adam Hadwin, of course, a couple weeks ago. Looked like he was going to win the Desert Classic in Palm Springs, and then got beat by a 500-1 Adam Longshot, as he calls himself. You get to, that doesn't mean that all calm personalities are going to win here. I mean, you'll get some fiery personalities that play really well here, like a Bubba Watson. But for guys that have never played this course before to kind of get used to this, I mean, you look at some of these guys, like Cameron Champ or, some of these young Americans that are playing this event. Terrell Hatton playing this event for the first time ever. I've seen some people tip him. I mean, he's a little bit of a fiery personality that kind of, if he misses a putt, it gets to him. He really wears his emotions on his sleeve. So, I mean, you got to be able to kind of get through this, and we'll talk about this next week with Pebble Beach. Some guys relish playing with the celebrities, and some guys don't. So, I mean, it's really up to each individual player.
Yeah, Terrell Hatton's a guy that I liked, at least from a statistical standpoint here in this event. But the great unknown, how somebody like Hatton going to feel about playing this one. Wes Reynolds, who's working with follow on Twitter at Wes Reynolds and the number 1. I apologize for the technical issues here today, Wes. Thanks for sticking it out with me. We'll chat with you again next week.
No problem. Always a pleasure. Enjoy the Super Bowl, everybody.
There you go. There's Wes Reynolds. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at Wes Reynolds and the number 1. I do apologize for some of the technical issues there. Fortunately, with the benefit of editing, I can cut those down a little bit, but, obviously won't be perfect. And this is what happens when you're recording, essentially live for the show. It just sometimes those things pop up a little bit. All right. I did want to mention something here at the end of today's show, Bell Let's Talk Day, with the hashtag Bell Let's Talk. If you're not familiar with Twitter, there are no spaces or anything like that in that hashtag, but it's a thing where they donate to mental health initiatives. It's a Canadian communications company. They donate to mental health initiatives, and it's something that's very important to me. A few years ago, I was in a situation where I did need some direction and needed some assistance from a trained professional regarding some mental health issues that I had, and it was something that was a very good use of my time. I've been in a much better position, learning some strategies on how to deal with those tough times, some strategies on how to not let those types of things snowball. Very, very important. And, when I work in a rather insular environment like I've got here, working from home with this business, a lot of writing, a lot of time to myself, there will be times where, I don't talk to my friends or my family all that often, or, don't see them all that often. And, that was one of the catalysts for me. It was one of the things that, I kind of couldn't get out of my own head a lot of the time. So that sort of set some things up for me. And for other people, it's something different. It's a different trigger. It's a different catalyst. Different stimuli can have different impacts on people. But most importantly, what I want to mention here today with that hashtag Bell Let's Talk Day is that it's not a shameful thing to need help. There should be no stigma attached to people that have mental health issues, mental health concerns. It's very, very important to talk about these things, whether you do it with friends, you do it with family, you do it with somebody who's completely impartial, a trained professional or a counselor or somebody like that. If you are somebody that has hardships and has problems with your mental health, talk to somebody. Get that assistance. Learn what you can do to live with it, to mitigate it, to overcome it. It's very, very important. It's a great use of your time, a great use of your resources. I think that it while it can be something that can be very expensive, and I understand that the financial burdens of it can be very, very difficult for a lot of people out there, take the steps to do what you can to get help for that stuff. Because there are people out there that are willing to help. You deserve the help. You are worth the help. It's something that I feel very strongly about as somebody who, did get the help and has helped people, friends of mine in the past to get through some tough times and to maybe, prevent some things that nobody, wants to, prevent some outcomes that nobody wants to see, wants to hear about. So it is something that's very important to me. I try not to, get on my soapbox about it too much on the show, but, with the Bell Let's Talk hashtag, with, the importance of mental health, with, even in wintertime, people with seasonal affective disorder, or, maybe you don't go out, you don't see your friends as much, you don't go to those parties and cookouts and things of that sort, can wear you down a little bit, can get you down a little bit. It doesn't matter why you have the mental health issues that you have. It just matters that you pay attention to them and get attention for them, that you go out there and actively try to improve on those situations, however you see the best fit for doing that, whatever makes sense for you financially, whatever you can do to improve your quality of life. And that's what it did for me. It improved my quality of life. I'm happier now in my relationship with my wife. I'm happier now in my relationships with my friends and family. It's just something that I wouldn't trade the time and resources I put into it for anything, because it was very beneficial for me. Maybe it won't work for you. Maybe you'll have to find something that's an alternative method or something like that, but at least try, because you deserve to give yourself that opportunity. Your friends and family deserve the opportunity to talk to you or see you in a different light. So for anybody out there that is having some sort of mental health problem, I encourage you to open up to whoever is willing to listen, because it is something that I think will be beneficial for you, will help in the long run. And if you can here today, if you're active on Twitter or on other forms of social media, something like that, use that Bell Let's Talk hashtag. I think it's a very important thing. I think that, as the stigma is going away here, a lot of progress is being made, but more progress can still be made. And a lot of that progress comes from people being willing to open themselves up, to that level of self-care that they need. So again, hashtag Bell Let's Talk. I think it's a very important thing. And hopefully if you are somebody out there that is struggling a little bit, you do take the opportunity and the time to try and improve your quality of life and your quality of mental health, not just because of the day today, but because it is something that, I think that you should do and something that you deserve to do to help yourself out.